Welcome back to another episode of the Property Management Show, where we deep dive into the world of property management, marketing, and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Ray Hespen from 4.5 Marketing Agency. Since 2012, 4.5 has helped many property managers just like you grow their businesses by getting you more owner leads using marketing. Whether you need help with your website, SEO, video, or written blog content, online reputation management, pay-per-click advertising, digital remarketing, anything you need related to marketing your property management business to owners, we are your people. Visit our website, 4andhalf.com, to learn more. That's FOURANDHALF.com. And today we have our frequent flyer podcast guest on the line, Ray Hespen. Welcome to the show, Ray.
Marie, thank you so much. Does the frequent flyer program come with anything, or is it just...
I'm keeping tabs in my head. Once we come up with the actual loyalty, mechanics, I'll let you know what you can redeem.
Thank you. No, but I'm thrilled. It's more of a treat for me. I was just, you got to ask. But anyways, thank you. Super excited to be on here.
Yeah. And so, Ray, last time we had you on the podcast, I was just checking when it was. It was kind of late 2023. And I think around that time, your team was just beginning to establish like this concept of maintenance analytics, right? Like what would it look like if property managers looked at maintenance from a data-driven standpoint? You guys are just starting to collect analytics. And so it's been like more than a year. And, what have you seen since then? Are there any insights that you feel like people should know from that experience? Or are there any assumptions you had in the beginning that were just dispelled, proven wrong?
First of all, I don't think if you get good measurement, you ever lose. And I think property management's been in this, this black hole of information. We've relied so much on having such exceptional people run our businesses. It's like the super high trust game. How's everything going? How's everything doing here? And I think there's an element to, especially as we see property managers scaling in size, it starts to become that thing where it's like you can't move what you can't measure. And we're starting to apply a lot of principles. So we released a product that is by far the best industry representation of the real world. So we got Insights and Insights Pro. And basically, it's a way to understand your own business against a ladder of maintenance excellence, good mapping of leading and lagging indicators, but then deep diving into your vendor efficiency, your technician efficiency, your coordinator efficiency, benchmarking, finances. All those things are starting to become like, I know what they are, instead of like trusting my gut or trusting Jim's gut or Jill's gut. Mm-hmm. And so we launched this, and I think it's been incredibly surprising to see how the market has kind of wrestled with some of this, right? Mm-hmm. There's probably some components in there that have been out there, like, I don't like what that says.
Yeah.
I'd rather not look.
And that's the first step.
And yeah, exactly. But then there's some customers, and I was just on a call earlier today where their metrics were so good and they're like, we need it to get better. And I was sitting there going, do you realize in benchmarking, you're darn near the top 10% of property management operators? Maybe we can quit driving on that one. Yeah. So there's a lot of really interesting things that have come, but I think, there is a reality. We have let Pandora out of his box or whatever.
Open the Pandora's box.
Open Pandora's box. Let Pandora out of its box. Or open Pandora's box. Let the cat out of the bag. Let the Pandora out of the box. Yeah. And so now there's no going back. I think the world understands now that you can be measured. There's leading and lagging indicators and everything else like that. And so there's really no putting the genie back in the bottle. Oh, let's just go for a 3-pack there. But and so it's been really phenomenal. So now everything is just jumping off of how do you move those numbers now? Like we're not, people aren't sitting there going, they exist or don't. It's how do we move them now? And that's a really great thing that our industry is moving in that direction as far as the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, not to put you on the spot, but I kind of am. Can you share any of those like benchmarks that you've seen throughout the year and a half or something that maintenance analytics has been collecting all this data from maintenance requests?
Here's one of the most important, I would say, as part of our benchmarking product in there, you can actually see your performance against geographical region and area. And let me tell you why that's important. Um, you can clearly see southern property management companies that have obviously warmer summers that hit a little earlier. You can watch speed of repair and cost just start flying through the roof, in May.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really unfair to compare yourself against maybe a company in Minnesota whose air conditioner and their costs and their speeds start taking off in July, August. And so the geographical impact to maintenance and measuring yourself people in weather regions, for example, is really important. So that way you don't falsely think you're killing it when you're not, or beating yourself up when you shouldn't be. And so I think that's one of the big learnings that I've had just initially is like geographical area and weather are so critical to just measure yourself against. There's a lot of learnings in there, but if you want like one out there, that's one that's been a pretty big aha.
That's great. And then I think in previous conversations, we've talked a lot about the customer satisfaction in terms of resident satisfaction and owner satisfaction. And obviously, owner satisfaction is a very, very highly correlated thing to retention, right, and churn. But resident satisfaction also affects owner satisfaction. And so what things, what items in, the maintenance analytics, factors that you are able to monitor kind of touch on like customer satisfaction, owner satisfaction, and essentially, owner retention. Like, are there things that jump out at you that you feel like people should know that is backed by data?
Yeah. So, admittedly, I used to think property managers had multiple customers, and they technically do, but there is a hierarchy of customer. And if you were to sit there and ask a property manager company and be like, would you rather lose 50% of your investors or 50% of your residents? Which would you take? I know which one I would. And so the hierarchy starts at the investor. They do not have a business if they do not have a customer. That is an investor, right? And so if you start from there, you recognize that hierarchy. Now, something that is beautiful and doesn't always happen, but turns out if you make the resident happy, you actually hang on to investors better. And so one of the leading indicators of investor retention, it is resident sat. Now, there's obviously some inferences there. Number one reason a resident would leave outside of rent price and some of these other things is they hate the maintenance and they leave. And guess what happens? Which is, in the macro environment today, it's not fun to have a rental sitting on a market right now. They're not pulling the rent that they were. The time on market's getting longer. And so avoiding that as much as possible is important. Secondarily, maintenance costs are still growing 8% year over year. Nobody likes to do the turnover costs while rents are holding or even compressing, right? So you happen to keeping the resident happy is really important for keeping the investor happy. The other thing that keeps the investor happy is annual maintenance spend per unit. So basically, resident experience and maintenance costs are the only two things that matter if you're trying to really drive investor attention. And I think a big thing is, and you can check it out at club-meld.com. There's this great thing around the ladder of maintenance excellence, where you can actually drill down literally from either of those points to go, if I've got a problem here, what are the different things it could be? And drill down, drill down, drill down. So instead of maintenance being this thing where it's like a baseball bat of, hey, be better. It's like, no, I've got a resident satisfaction issue. What is it? Turns out it might be my investor approval speed on repairs. And so making it a lot more known. And so that way people aren't just sitting there running after different things, feeling like we're doing work without having an impact.
Yeah, I love that. Doing work without having impact, because oftentimes when we're using our gut to measure things, to kind of measure things like, oh, I think I'm doing a pretty good job. And then we suddenly have a way to measure things like, oh, I thought you were doing better, but I guess we're not. But then you haven't kind of trained your brain to look at it more critically, you go back to your gut, like, okay, I'm not using my gut, I'm using data. I see the number. This is my customer satisfaction number for residents. It's not good. And then if you go back to your gut, like, what do I think drives it? Then it's like, why even bother, right? Like, you have to be methodical. Once you go data, like, you gotta be methodical the whole way through. Do you agree?
There was I forget who the quote was, and I feel bad for not attributing it. Said, "In God we trust, but all others must bring data."
I love that.
And there is an element. I mean, guts are important, especially if you've been in this business a long time. Like,
Yeah.
your gut's probably not wrong. It probably will lead you to some really good things. And so we built a lot of data and process off of operators' guts. And so not completely writing that off, but your gut should lead you to, I think something's wrong here. Is it really? Let me go and investigate. You
But
need another piece of information to validate that or not, or have data tell you when your gut doesn't tell you. So
yeah. And so speaking of data, I know that your team recently released like a benchmark report because you've been able to collect a lot of data since the launch of maintenance analytics. Do you mind sharing with our audience some of like the key takeaways from that benchmark report that you guys released?
yeah, so I'll start with as part of we have the monthly meld, which is we try to release data month over month, year over year data in general. So we try to take a little bit better of approach of giving like a more holistic view of the year. And as everyone knows, it is like real estate is the wonkiest thing in the last 5 years. And so the things we were trying to do was help highlight some of the trends and things that we saw. So I'll give you some examples. So if there are some general trends that you'll find in that report, here's a few of them. One, everybody cares about residents staying in their rentals way more than they used to. That is obvious through the emphasis on resident satisfaction. It's obvious through speed of repairs. And you can see that in the data there. The other thing that's really interesting, and I found this one, Marie, crazy interesting, is this concept that maintenance costs are still going up, and that's a bummer. As far as cumulatively on properties, but the average cost of a repair has went down for the first time in a while. So meaning total spend's going up, but the tickets prices are going down, which indicates that people are doing more repairs at lower cost, introducing more preventative programs, some of those things. People are trying to save the investor from sticker shock one way or another. And so that's a way that's combative. The other thing that's super interesting is we're seeing still a larger tick up of operators doing internal technician work, bringing more maintenance in-house. And the reason that's super interesting is, yes, it's to internalize and vertically integrate, but we're seeing that's actually a way that people are using to control the cost in the market. So, for example, something that you'll find in that report, I believe, if I'm remembering off the top of my head correctly, is vendor invoices went an average down like 1 or 2% or something like that, whereas internal technician repairs went down like 15%, pretty significant. And so we're seeing people use it both as a way of profitability, but it's also a way to start controlling some cost.
That's really interesting to me because I know that towards was it the latter part of 2023 or around the middle of 2024 or the whole time, like I know there was kind of a crisis, like you couldn't get tradespeople into properties. There just wasn't enough supply for the demand of maintenance on houses. And so it's interesting that your data shows more property management companies are kind of building up their own internal maintenance team. And my first instinct was to think, oh, it's to insulate themselves from having to always look for someone new and kind of being outbid by the competitor. So by promising a technician like consistent work, then they can kind of like save some money with security. But yet you were saying that overall cost still went up.
Yes.
So
So annual spend per unit goes up. Like, so if you have a rental unit and if you look at, say, hey, how much did I spend in this particular unit all year? It went up. Still going up. But if you were to look at the owner statement every month, the average amounts that you would see decreasing off of there went down. So again, higher frequency, lower cost maintenance. Um, the thing I would say though is hiring technicians is insanely hard. It is more difficult than finding great vendors. More difficult. You've got to have a real commitment for it because it is the same person, right? The person you'd hire for a technician is the person a plumbing company would hire.
Yeah.
And so it's more of an element of vertically integrating such an important part of your business. If you realize that you lose investors by maintenance costs, if you realize that you lose residents by bad experiences, it's a way for operators to play a little bit more offense. Vendors are a huge part of what it is, but I'll give you a macro though. Vendors are still constrained. There's more great professional vendors out there. We actually launched a great vendor nexus product that connects some of these great large providers. That's in the app. People can find in their zip code. But there's an element there where as people are doing this maintenance here, I'm losing my train of thought here. As people are doing the maintenance here, they're doing it to vertically integrate and do the profit in ways that a lot of the regulatory agencies and the governments are coming after these fees, costs, everything else like that. And so it's also a defense a little bit on that as well.
Like not having all your eggs in one basket. Like if I'm unable to continue doing my ancillary revenue streams that the government's kind of wanting to take away, I have at least built this other profit center that is likely going to be, touched by the government. That's interesting. Yeah, and I kind of wanted to go back to a little bit about the cost, the annual cost. Yeah, the annual cost of repairs per owner. So you said that it goes down, but I was going back to like our previous podcast because I remember you mentioning like a magic number. So I think you mentioned that the magic number is around 12% of rents collected, and staying within that magic number, you're more likely to retain that customer year over year, and going beyond that magic number, they're more likely to churn that year. Have you found that has stayed true, or has that magic number changed?
Marie, that is a great question. Admittedly, like we have not reran that analysis because it's been so dynamic, admittedly. And so like even over the time periods, like this data is all garbage. Like if you look at 2021 through 2023, it's like, do you draw any? It is a large enough data set to do it because you need 1 year, 2 year, 3 year renewal rates and stuff like that. The thing that we are doing though, that we know the other lens is we know investors will stay around if residents are happy. The thing that we're doing a study on now is actually seeing maintenance behavior to lease length and which things cause which things, so instead of being like, let's give a great experience, instead it's like, and here's some hypotheses. Turns out if you have a lot of plumbing issues, does that disproportionately change renewing lease versus electrical issues? Or is it the first amount of repairs in then 3 to 6 months? Or is it if a resident has a slug of repairs in a time period, does it drive it? And so we're trying to look for those things to basically, one, how do you avoid them in general? But two, when you do see them, you ultimately can augment it. Because I will tell you, if you can change lease length through your operations, imagine being able to walk in with an investor at that point and sit there and be like, we can change lease length by 18% because of what we do on maintenance side. This is how much it means financially for you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I will go back, Marie, and I feel stupid because what I was going to talk about on the labor and stuff, by the way, it is lightening up a little bit.
Okay.
But it's because we share jobs and people with the construction industry. So if you follow the jobs report, construction has lost a lot of jobs. And so those people are returning to R&M, repairs and maintenance, turnovers, renos. And so we are getting a lot more people in there, which I think is showing faster speed of repair. I think that's why we're seeing the slowing down of increased annually in spend. That's just one other note there I felt like I
Yeah.
should share.
Yeah. The reason
It's
I
not
wanted
easy
to,
yet.
yeah, I get it's difficult to kind of like distill that information because so many macroeconomic factors. But the reason I was really interested to know if you've run those that magic number percentage is because rents have been falling, and so if the magic number is 12% of rents collected, yet maintenance costs are going up, then kind of like, well, is that still the magic number if they're inversely, like moving in an inverse thing? So yeah, that was just something of a curiosity that we can revisit
Yeah.
later, maybe on another podcast. I don't know.
I, you're spot on, and I make the joke I went to public school, but you're talking about something really important. Is saying the numerator of that equation is continuing to go up,
Yeah.
and the denominator of rent is holding or going down. Are people still holding the line, or is there some more tolerance there? That is a great question. And I think there is going to be an element as things are kind of stabilizing. I think I'm trying to remember, but I think last thing I looked at, rent year over year rent increases were still 3%, but that's quickly going down, and that's like blended. Renewals are still holding a increase usually, but lease churns are very much holding a contraction in rent price on average. So yeah, it's a great point. I'm curious too. Now you got me thinking.
Now you can't sleep at night.
I'll see, but
But to
I
kind of
have
go
dreams
back,
about it. Yeah.
but I kind of want to go back to like the benchmark report. So I took a look at it, and I know that now I'm losing my train of thought because there were so many tangents. Okay. So one of the the charts that I saw was like you had highlighted individual work categories and then the speed of repairs for that category and then invoice amounts and kind of compared year on year 2023 versus 2024. And it looks like, even certain categories where the median invoice amount was like higher, customer satisfaction still went up. It like didn't stay stagnant. It still went up even if both owner and resident satisfaction went up, even though the average median repair costs went up. And so,
Yeah. I'll even just say on that, like, if there is something that is undoubtedly true when looking at the data across the platform, the emphasis on the resident experience is by far probably the largest focal point that anybody is doing. It is so obvious. Everybody's trying to figure out how to control costs. We talk about the technicians,
yeah,
but people are pretty intolerable with bad experiences right now because of the downstream effects of that, right? I think I was at the I think it was Lead Simple University, and they were doing like hands down, like somebody did a hands down exercise of like time on market, and like put your hands down if it's like been 14 days, 30 days, whatever. And you're sitting there going like, oh my goodness, if you were to compare this to 2022, when you just had to rent something sight unseen, and now you're sitting there 45 days on the market.
oh wow,
Everybody is sitting there going like, whatever it takes, do not allow that to happen. Try and be in front of that. And so just that's a massive point of emphasis. So again, to your point in the data and the benchmarking report, even though you'll see costs, like the thing that you'll notice, very few things are trending down in terms of resident satisfaction. And it's not because our measurements have changed. It's because our operators, our customers are like getting emphatic about that experience, which makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that in the past we've talked about like leading and lagging indicators. And I like extracted from a previous podcast like a list of really good lagging indicators that you brought up. So it's like speed of repairs, resident satisfaction, vendor health scores, technology utilization rate, and annual maintenance spends. And I feel like out of all those, like speed of repairs is highly related to resident satisfaction. Vendor health scores, not quite sure, but it still ties into like how if your vendors are happy, they're more likely to respond to you faster, and like and then annual maintenance spends also ties into like owner satisfaction. So satisfaction for both cohorts of your customers is really important. And then I started thinking about the recent acquisition the Property Meld had, right? You guys acquired Mezzo. And then the first thing that came to my mind was like, oh, that's really interesting, what they do. I wonder what leading or lagging indicators is Ray and and his team trying to optimize here, right? Because I'm always thinking about like the why behind it. And then I had some ideas, but before we kind of like dig into that, to people listening who haven't heard yet of the acquisition, or they don't know what the acquired company is, Mezzo, do you mind just giving a brief description so that we're all on the same page?
Yeah, and then I'll jump into why, because you and I are both. By the way, kudos to your notes on remembering all this. What's so great, Marie, is most of the listeners probably don't remember the stuff that we talk about,
Yeah.
but this is good. But Mezzo is probably one of the most impressive AI intake and triaging assistants that we've seen. I've gotten to be around the market for around 10 years. I've gotten to see some people attempt to take some cracks at it. It is so hard because there's so many different variations of like what can happen in a repair. And you don't want somebody to get hurt. You've got legal responsibilities, costs, what's an emergency. You're overlaying a lot of things. And so Mezzo has a bot called Max, which if you can imagine Max, it's like the world's most friendliest technician that sits on the resident's shoulder as they help navigate, ask some questions, empathy of what's happening to really get that information, remediate something, or even prevent an emergency in operation there. And so it is one of the coolest tools. We ended up acquiring them, and I will tell you, I joke that I've got rose-colored glasses, and so I always see the positive.
Uh-huh.
And so after we closed and getting to dig more into it, I just realized, so it's like, this thing is better than I thought. It is so incredible. But anyways, yes, that is Mezzo, and they are now part of the Property Meld family.
That's exciting. And so, okay, when I was going through Mezzo's website, when I heard about the acquisition, I'm like, ooh, I know Ray is an engineer. He like thinks very methodically. I'm curious to guess the why. So I checked them out, and the TLDR was like, oh, I feel like their unique selling proposition is they've figured out how to automate triage. And maybe that's wrong, but that was kind of like my take. And then I started thinking about triage, like where does triage fit in the whole realm of, property maintenance? And then I realized that like triage hasn't come up as often as the other like leading and lagging indicators. But I feel like it doesn't get the attention it deserves because like if we think about like, a river, like triage is at like the very top of the river, right? And getting triaged right has a big impact on a good number of the lagging indicators. So speed of repairs, if you triage properly, you impact speed of repairs, you impact resident satisfaction, also vendor health scores and happiness, because if you triage well, you give the proper work to the proper vendors and you collect whatever information you need before the vendors are sent because you triaged well. And then even annual maintenance spends, because you're not unnecessarily sending technicians that basically go there and be like, well, that's not a plumbing thing. That's actually another vendor has to be there. So like you save money. And so to me, it was just like, oh, I'm interested to know if like, did I hit it on the head or did I hit the nail on the head? I don't know the expression, but like, are there even more or more important like leading indicators, lagging indicators that you feel like perfecting triage could kind of like impact?
First of all, I am beyond impressed. I'm not only impressed, I'm in awe because you nailed so well exactly what it is. It's not, I think if you were to go like, how do I do this job to be done, intake and triage, but you were talking about it exactly how we think about it. If you think about property maintenance operations, it's not just about remediating it. It's about getting it to the vendor and technician exactly what they need to know so they can show up right the first time. It's about preventing an emergency. It's a lot of downstream. And so you are, like, you guessed it so well. And as a matter of fact, Uh you do. You do. My admiration. but but I think what's really cool, by the way, Marie, you're obviously a very intelligent person. The fact that you were able to articulate that, I think, is so impressive because you've been paying to the industry. And if you see that, it probably means there's some really sharp operators that are also seeing that, right? I'm starting to see how property maintenance operations is not about, I get a repair and I send it to somebody. How well can I get that repair? How better can I make that experience of submitting it for the resident? How much information can I collect? How much can I remediate? Everything. That job is really important, not just for that thing, but it impacts other parts of property maintenance operations. And if you do those other parts well, guess what happens? Annual maintenance spend per unit goes down, resident sat goes up. And so, boy, you nailed it on the head. And the other thing that you're completely right about, by the way, is the fact that the things that you talked about on what these are going to improve, you're spot on. We've got the scoreboard now, right? We can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Yeah.
This time. It's out there. So what should we see? We should see faster response times, better scheduling times, single trip repairs more frequently, lower cost repairs more frequently. So we should see it in some of those metrics that you articulated. And that's what intake and triage does. If you do it really well, it remediates stuff that doesn't need to be worked on, but ultimately makes those downstreams better and faster as well. Wow.
Oh,
I'm going to go back to the company, by the way, when I get out of this. I'd be like, she could articulate property maintenance operations and what intake and triage will do to lagging indicators in the business. I feel like I could leave for the day. This is great. Good job.
Well, to be fair too, like I've been in this industry for like 10 years. So it's like not like I just woke up one day and then like, it's like
I understand that, but I've been in it 10 years and this is my whole world and you just like articulated it.
I think it's just a matter of like how you think. I feel like I really like talking to you because we kind of think alike. Like I know you look at the world like from a process standpoint, and flowchart because you're an engineer by heart. I was born to an engineer family. My parents are both engineers, and so that's all I know. That's just how my brain works. Yeah. Maybe I should have been an engineer, but that's a whole other separate story. I needed an outlet for my artsy fartsy side. But that's why I'm into marketing. But yes, that I feel like, I just wanted to I wanted to articulate that because I felt like, oh, it's obvious. But I also recognize that not everyone's brains work that way. And so I wanted to articulate it and also verify if, I was missing something. It sounds like that was kind of it. But yeah.
You're spot on. I think, but I will say the experience is so exceptional. It is so good. I would send it to my friends. They're like, try this out. I would send it to my family. Try this out. Submit a maintenance request. No direction, because residents don't get direction, right? Nobody gets direction.
No.
And it is by far the most positive feedback loop I've gotten from anybody of how positive submitting a maintenance request would be.
Okay, well, they're your friends and family, though. Are they trying to butter you up?
I will tell you, I have the kind of friends that will absolutely destroy me any chance I get, and I love that about them.
Because if you lead with like, hey, we just sank like a bunch of money on this company. Can you tell me how good it is? You're like, ha ha ha, it's good.
It's so great. No. I don't ask those people. As a matter of fact, there's times I was, I'll tell this small story. I was at my son's little wrestling practice, and I happened to see one of my friends there. He's like, I heard about the acquisition. Congrats. So I said, yeah, do you want to try it? Sure. Boom. And so I got to watch him. Like, that's what I prefer to do. I don't want to hear like how
you're like, looking over his shoulder.
100%. Is it intuitive? Is it interesting? You get to find the moments where they're like, and there's body cues that are really, really important. And anyways, every sign points to this. And I was sharing this on the announcement webinar, but I was like, nobody likes to call their baby ugly.
Yes.
But boy, did I think our baby, Property Meld's baby, was absolutely hideous after I put it right next to each other. And the claim that I made, which I think is very, very real, we've all gotten to experience really, really shitty chatbots. Like it,
oh yeah,
this is an exceptional experience, it will absolutely kill form-based submission.
Yeah, it
It
was
is.
yeah. I have, I have heard, well, from Liz too, from Property Meld. So again, maybe rose-colored glass. I haven't tried it myself, but that yeah, it's like the best. Like basically, customer experience was at the forefront of like when they built this. Like that was definitely in mind. Um, but what's interesting too is that because it uses AI, and I know that since the advent of generative AI, or not advent, but like since it became popularized, there have been many companies slapping on AI to their product and doing a poor job at it, and it's kind of ruined the name of AI because a lot of companies just slap a lazy, untrained AI chatbot loaded with barely any knowledge base and then saying like, hey, this is going to improve our customer response times because it's AI answering your questions 24/7. But it's like, if it's not trained well, it was not thoughtfully created, curated, it's never gonna do what you think AI is gonna do. People forget that AI isn't magic. You don't just like put AI chatbot on my website and it magically like no, like it's you know, it's a software they have to configure. You have to teach. And
Mhm.
so yeah, so I feel like people often would think AI, and I think two groups like get excited about AI just because it's AI, and then people who have been burned and be like AI and foo it right away because
Yeah, yeah.
they've seen too many of the lazy implementations.
100%. And so I think there is an element, and just like being in software 10 years, it was like automation, then it's APIs, connectivity,
Yeah.
and then it's blockchain, metaverse. And it's like if you weren't introduced, like you would be a dumb company to not try and find a way how to capitalize on the thing. But you're 100% right. The application of those things. So we've done obviously some of the more the easy things. I think everybody's gotten to see some of the large language models, Gemini, OpenAI, all these ones kind of coming out there, and there's some really amazing things you can do. I think there's an element of how do you map it to do the things that we talked about. The scoreboard will not change. AI should help the scoreboard.
Yes.
Like, and so then really getting an understanding of what can it do there and what not. And then the other thing is when you are putting any sort of automation, and let's put AI in the automation bucket. I know it's not automation, but the thing I'm going to put out in the world and I'm going to have it do something for me that is not being done by a human, for example. In maintenance, the cost of a wrong decision can be catastrophic. One plumbing issue that does not get caught as an emergency, for example, can be catastrophic. And so a lot of the times you can afford wrong think or hallucinations or anything else in those scenarios. And so you're 1,000% correct. There's things that you can't do poorly like that. So there's got to be a lot of thoughtfulness to it. The way that this is designed is a mix between like really intelligent, almost like psychology in combination with some really incredible AI with some built-in materials to help people navigate some of these things that just makes it, I mean, it's so well done. But you're 1,000% right. But a lot of these large language models are going to continue to get better, and just these skinned out AI tools are probably going to become, a lot of them are going to become obsolete. But I think what the defensibility is long term and the way that we think about it, AI most likely, of course, there's some great applications and there's different types of AI, but there's agentic where how do you get it to where somebody is almost helping you make a perfect decision?
Yeah.
You've had a repair come in. Who should it go to? You've got a world changing where the real world data is telling you lead time, satisfaction, cost, everything, capacity, the type of repair, what urgency it is, and be like, give it to Bill. Bill should take it. And then there's things where it's like, well, Bill needs scheduled. AI agentically, hey, I think Bill should be doing this repair this time. And so having underlying data to help make perfect decisions and being able to capture the real world digitally is going to be that big next step in how AI really makes a move on the scoreboard. And so we're pretty pumped about it. We've been ahead in the game on data for a long time. This actually compounds it because there's some cool things in here. Obviously, won't get into it, but that is just going to make perfect decisions easier. And that's where AI layers into so well.
Yeah, and that's an example of how, being intentional with the technology that you're implementing comes into play because we often hear property managers saying like, "Hey, how can I put AI on my website or how can I use AI in marketing?" Like, well, first of all, let's talk about like what you're trying to get at. And then it should come after it because it's the tool, right? That's not the goal. The goal is not to implement AI. The goal should be something else. Like, what are you trying to move? Which needle, right? Where are we trying to move it to? Where are you now? And if you don't even know where you're at now, well, how would you know what to do, how far you are to even know what to invest in time and money to reach whatever random goal. And if you set a goal and you don't know where you are, where did you get that goal from? Right. So yeah.
It's a how, not a why.
Yeah. Yeah. So it goes back to kind of what you were saying in the beginning, right? Like, I know in recent few years, there's been this move in the property management industry to become a lot more data conscious and kind of pushing for more data-driven decisions. And it's so easy to get lost in those numbers. I think after one of the profit coaches like benchmark presentations, a lot of property managers were talking about like, geez, I hope no one just like takes the benchmark like as an absolute because like it's a blended benchmark. Like you should still know how applicable it is to your local market. And so I feel like, that's in terms of like profitability, but it applies to every aspect of like property management, even maintenance.
Yeah, and this is the thing I think we're relatively close to. If we can truly be the people that can affect NOI, which I believe we can, it's becoming more known, and you can start getting to predictable NOI. We have opened up the world to the largest non-publicly traded stock market. Because everyone is going to, and I know they get their market, but how your market performs on returns is going to be where everybody shoves their money into real estate.
Yeah.
And if your market doesn't perform well, it's probably not, right? Money will follow the returns. And so it's not going to be far off to where we're all on the same scorecard of NOI. And that has to include appreciation, obviously, as well. But we're not far off from becoming a very transactional business in terms of just delivering great returns while providing one of the most important services in America, which is housing. And so it's not far off. The conversation around how good do I need to be in this particular market versus another particular market, it's going to start blending together probably sooner than a lot of us are prepared for. But
Yeah, that's exciting but scary at the same time. Kind of 10
I
years
love it.
ago, yeah, kind of 10 years ago, it's just so weird. Like 10 years ago when I started working in property management marketing, this was like nowhere close to even being thought of. And now we're here and it's like it's exciting what the next 10 years are going to bring. It's insane.
Here's why everyone should be excited. Everyone's got their retirement in something, in a 401k. Most people got it in a 401k or whatever. All that money is going to the stock market of these businesses that are operating. That's fantastic. We're starting to get our industry into a point where it can accept money like that.
Yeah.
And when money goes, opportunity and wealth is created. And so nobody should be scared about being a location where capital is deployed. We should be excited about it because there's a lot of property managers out there who've always wanted the resources, who've always wanted to sell their business, always wanted to grow. And guess what? Where money jumps in, wealth is created. And so it is, I think it's a really fantastic thing. Of course, the unknown, but here's what everybody can and plan on being. If you run after NOI today, then when that time comes, you're just going to be ahead. It is inevitable. It is just a matter of when, and you can't lose by running that strategy today. Be focused on the customer's NOI, not just a task taker for a property. It's great defensible advice for the world that I think is inevitably coming. Maybe I'm wrong, but
yeah, I love that clarity of the goal because I feel like Yes, there are so many metrics that you can get lost in, but if your North Star is improving NOI, you can't go wrong at all.
It's unlosable.
Yeah.
Sorry, delivering better returns for our investors and the people that trust us with their assets. You can't lose it. So yeah.
Great. Well, it's always nice talking to you, Ray. There's always a lot of rich insights and just discussion and back and forth. And so, yeah, if anyone from our audience is interested to learn more about the stuff you're sharing with us today, how can they reach you?
So if you want to check us out, obviously we got mezzo.io. You can certainly come and check out Max. Max will be inside the Property Meld product at no cost to our customers who are on standard pricing. We're actually giving it away for free, which is crazy. It's $1.60 product. Ours is a $1.60 product. We're giving it away, both of them, for $1.60. So you're going
to not free.
I like that better. It's such a bad business move. But anyways, so you can check us out at mezzo.io, or you can check us out at propertymeld.com. They will both take you to the same amazing people who can help you identify what your problems are, what you're trying to fix in your organization, and help you figure out if we're the right people to go and help you get it done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ray. It's a pleasure speaking with you. And to our audience, we hope you got at least one. I know there were a lot of insights that you could take away from today. And yeah, see you next time. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you.
And that's all we have for this episode of the Property Management Show, brought to you by 4.5 Marketing Agency. 4.5 is obsessed with helping residential property managers get more owner leads through marketing. Whether you are in need of help with your website, SEO, online reputation, video or written blog content, website content, even pay-per-click advertising like, Google Ads, Bing, social media, anything that you would need to market your property management company to owners to get more owner leads, you name it, we can help you. Visit our website, fourandhalf.com, to learn more. That's fourandhalf.com. If you are enjoying our podcast, please hit subscribe if you haven't. We are always open to feedback. If you have any topics that you wish we would cover, any suggestions, commentary, bring them on. Send an email to marketing@fourandhalf.com. If you are, feeling generous, maybe you can leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app so that other property managers can find our podcast and, listen to it just like you do. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are looking forward to seeing you on our next episode. Bye.